How about if we, oh. Well, I think I will begin since I think that we have lots to cover in a very short period of time. So what I'd like to do is start off by warmly welcoming everyone. Oriana, if you could kindly go to the first slide, please. Just want to warmly welcome everyone to the Davenport Federal Budget 2022 debrief. It is today is a special day. Not only it's because it's the Thursday before the long weekend, but it's a day that we get a chance to have a really good discussion about our federal budget, which just came out last Thursday. I'm going to start off with the land recognition, then I'll tell you a little bit about how today will unfold, and we'll go from there. So land recognition. So we acknowledge the land we're meeting on via Zoom is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So what I want to let people know is that I am recording this session. The reason for that is it allows those who weren't able to participate to get a chance to actually view it and to be able to participate in hearing a little bit more about the key details of the budget, since it's a big one and it's a significant one and there's lots of details to understand. The only two ways we use it is one, we put it on YouTube for people to watch, and then the other way we use it is we take segments of it and we use it for our social media. So primarily it's used to educate. So if people are asking specific questions around immigration or mental health or environment or housing, we take certain aspects of the questions and we put on social media. Again, it's a way of educating people about the federal budget 2022. I'm going to start off with a bit of a presentation, and then the rest of the time will be devoted to Q&A. And you'll be able to ask your questions. You just have to put your questions into the Q&A section at the very bottom of your screen. Some of you will want to ask the question yourself, in which case we will, undo the button. I think we'll press a button that says enable you to speak, and then you'll be able to ask your question and speak. And then some of you have already asked us to ask the question on your behalf, in which case I'm going to invite one of my team members of a team, Zarowitz, as part of my office, who's going to ask the question on their behalf. And if there are follow-up questions or additional questions that you don't think we get a chance to get to, please feel free to email me at the email address that's at the bottom of each of the slides that you'll be seeing, julie.zarowitz@parle.gc.ca. We're religious, and I'm religious about reading them and looking at them and responding. And you also have my telephone number. I also want to encourage those that don't already receive my weekly email update, please do so. It really contains an amazing amount of information about any federal announcements that week, things that I'm doing in the community, and funding that's available for the community. And I'm very big on making sure that Davenport residents knows about the funding that's available at the federal level and has an opportunity to apply for it so that we get our fair share in Davenport. So I think that's it for this page. So if we go to the next page, thank you. I'm actually going to start off with a bit of context setting. I was reading an article in the Globe and Mail, and I realized, I think we forgot just how significant an impact the global COVID pandemic had on our economy. 2020 was historic, and this is according to an economist historian, Adam Towes of Columbia University. He said that in the first months of the pandemic, 95% of the world suffered a simultaneous economic contraction. That's never happened before. He said 3 billion adults lost their jobs or, had to try working from home. Again, never happened before in the history of mankind. 1.5 billion young people had their schooling interrupted, and one would say a lot of them still continue to have some of those interruptions. And the sum of the lost earnings in the first months of the pandemic was 10 trillion US dollars, more than a tenth of the global GDP. So just really wanted to make sure people understand the impact of COVID initially on our economy, and that caused enormous stress on the global economy. In Canada, the impact to our economy was also very deep. Our Canadian economy in the first few months, starting in April 2020, it contracted 17%, which was the deepest since the recession of the 1930s. 3 million Canadians lost their jobs. The federal government had to step in and provide $435 billion in emergency supports to Canadians and businesses, because we were determined that we were going to ensure that people keep their jobs, keep Canadians employed, and keep as many businesses afloat as possible. Next, please. Now, 2.5 years later, the economy has now roared back. We've recovered 112% of the jobs lost during the first months of the pandemic, compared to only 90% in the US. The employment rate is down to 5.5%, which is close to 5.4% low, close to the 5.4% low in 2019, which was before the pandemic started, a full year before. Real GDP, which kind of measures our economic growth level. So real GDP is a full percentage point above where we were before the pandemic even started. We avoided a depression. So all of the measures that the federal government put into place, and 8 out of $10 that was spent was from the federal government. You might not have heard that across the country, or in Ontario, or in Toronto, or wherever we come from, but 8 out of $10 of all the economic supports during the pandemic was from the federal government, and it worked. It worked. We avoided a depression. We did recover quickly, but the path ahead we know is going to be a hard one. There are challenges ahead. Inflation is currently the highest since the 1980s. The issue is global. It's not just in Canada. There's supply chains that have been interrupted everywhere. Russia has started a war against Ukraine that is causing further supply chain issues and further inflation issues, particularly around the price of oil. There's purchasing changes, like basically people's behaviors have sort of changed as well. So there's a number of other reasons about why we have high inflation rates, but it's a global problem, and it is a problem that impacts our everyday lives here in Canada. We have a huge labor shortage issue in Canada. So 1 million jobs go unfulfilled. Our emergency supports have come to an end, because all that spending has moved our debt to GDP ratio from 30% to 50%. So we spent a lot of money. As I said in the previous slide, $435 billion is a lot of money. So we spent a lot of money. It worked, but we now have to be fiscally responsible, because we know if we don't get our economy back on track and back in order, we're not going to be able to have a sustained good economic growth moving forward. So deficits and debt has to be reduced. And we have to prepare for the next emergency. If you listen to people like Stephen Poloz, he would say to you, and for those that don't know, he's the previous governor of the Bank of Canada. And he basically said, Canada's done a great job. They've provided the emergency supports. We've now recovered in terms of numbers. There's still sort of some challenges ahead, but now we have to start preparing for the next possible emergency. Next, please. So it's in that context that federal budget 2022 was introduced. And our main thing is, how do we grow the economy? Because the only way we can continue to have a really equitable, prosperous growth in Canada, the only way we can continue to offer really great social welfare programs is if we can grow our economy. And then how is it that we can make life affordable for Canadians now? Because we know, despite of the fact that it looks like our economy's come roaring back, we know life isn't easy for people. And so if you look at these 7 bullet points, and I'll run through them in a second, just to let you know, there's around 350 pages in the budget. I won't be able to get through all of the points, but I want to just get through some of the highlights and see what questions you have. But I'm happy to respond to anything else that you might not see here. So the first thing that our Deputy Prime Minister and our Minister of Finance wanted to focus on is on housing. We know we're in a crisis mode. It is because we haven't invested for a really long time in Canada in housing. We have over the last 6 years, but we needed to have done it over the last 30 years. So housing is core. Climate action. Climate change is happening. And so we've signed on to the Paris Accord targets. We've signed on to net zero by 2050. We are determined to continue to sort of chart the path forward to achieving our goals and decarbonizing our economy. We have to increase our spending in public health. That's a key priority. We have to continue to support our businesses and make sure we have the workforce that we need. We have to continue our work on reconciliation and undo the wrongs that we have done to the Indigenous people that live here in Canada. We need more spending on national defense and on Ukraine, and I'll go into it a little bit further. And then last, tax fairness and effective governments. Basically, how is it that that we're going to be paying for all of this? I think that's basically what that section is. Okay, next, please. Victor Tavares. Sorry, you guys. I have to make sure my phones are off. Okay. All right, so there's a two-part slide here, and basically what I'm going to do is run through housing. But let me give you a little bit of a preamble. The investment that we have in federal budget 2022 is literally the largest and most ambitious investment that has ever been made in housing in this country. What we're trying to do is double the number of houses in Canada in less than 10 years. Okay, so that is going to be a very, very big undertaking, and we are determined to do that. Okay, we also are trying to put in a whole bunch of measures that's going to help Canadians buy their first homes. We're going to try to protect renters. We're going to try to sort of not allow foreign investors or foreign buyers into our marketplace for a period of time. And we're going to try to eliminate some of the unfair practices that we see. What I want to say, again, before I go into these bullet points, is not only the federal government. So when we came in late 2015, we started investing in housing. Hasn't been enough. We've been out of housing for over 30 years. All levels of government did not invest enough. And so we've reached this point right now, and it's been exacerbated by the global inflation issue and some of the supply chain issues that we have right now, as well as the labor issues that we have. I will tell you, solving this problem, even with all the money that we're putting in, and this is a historic amount, is not going to be solving the problem overnight. And it will not just be solved by the federal government. There are levers and tools that exist at the federal, provincial, and municipal level. And all of us has to work together. And how well we work together will determine how fast we will get additional housing onto the marketplace and more housing affordability and affordable housing available to Canadians. So on this slide, I'm going to talk about, these are three measures that are sort of top of mind. We're introducing a tax-free first home savings account that would give first-time buyers the ability to save up to $40,000. So it'll work exactly like your RRSPs. And so you could still take out up to $40,000 out of your RRSPs. And then now you've got the tax-free first home savings account as well. So you could technically save $80,000 towards your first home, which is really great. The second thing is we're doubling the first-time home buyers tax credit to $10,000, providing up to $1,500 in direct support to home buyers, which is really great. And then three, multi-generational home renovation tax credit of up to $7,500. So I think that there are, I know for me, my mom, she's old. I keep on thinking, oh, Mom, you should come and live with me. And I would love to get some additional support funding to try to renovate my house a little bit so that it actually facilitates perhaps her living with me. So I think a lot of people are looking, within their own homes to try to sort of accommodate their senior members of their family or people who need some additional assistance. Next slide, please. Three other things that we're looking to do is we're putting more money into rapid housing. I know I said to you that it's going to be hard for us to solve this problem overnight, But I'll say to you, one of the things that we are seeing a lot of is the rapid houses. We've put in a lot of money into rapid houses. So all of our major cities, whether it's Edmonton or Montreal or Toronto or Vancouver, Halifax, you are seeing lots of rapid housing. These are for our most vulnerable, those who have mental health issues, those who are homeless. Really, we have these really wonderful rapid housing, and it really is making a big difference in their lives. We're putting $4 billion over 5 years to launch the Housing Accelerator Fund. So this is basically, we're giving money to cities, and we're saying, look, cities, we're going to give you a heck of a lot of money, but what we need you to do is we need you to make it easier for developers to get approvals. You have to change some of your zoning rules. You have to make gentle density more available. So we're basically putting a lot of money on the table. And so what we're trying to do is convince the other levels of government to work with us in order to accelerate the number of houses that are out there. And so there's a lot of different aspects of this. Protection of renters and buyers. I'm going to need a little bit of my my notes for this one. I think the main points here is that I think a lot of buyers basically are blind bidding, and so they need essentially what we want to do is eliminate it so that people kind of know what the bids are in there so that they can make the best bid possible. And also, I think one of the things we're looking at is making sure it's mandatory for people to actually get inspections so they can't skip that as part of the buying process. For the renters, I'm going to actually ask my staff at the end to actually help me with that, because for some reason, the notes that I printed out, for some reason, does not have my notes around my around my renters and the supports and protections that we actually provide to renters. Hold on. Yeah, no, I do not have them. Okay, so next is prohibit commercial enterprises. So this is just basically not allowing foreign investors to actually invest in Canada. Right now we have it for a period of 2 years. We're going to see if it actually has an impact on the marketplace. And there's a lot of other stuff in here that you don't see. So things like there's a lot of big commercial companies that actually buy a lot of apartment buildings, and they're investors, and they keep on jacking up the prices for renters. And so we're actually going to take a quick peek at them. We think that there might be tax incentive that actually sort of enables them. So I think we're going to try to look at changing that. Okay, next one, please. Okay, so this slide is really about green transition, net zero by 2050. As I said, pandemic, whatever happens with the pandemic, whatever happens with the war, whatever else happens in the world, climate change is happening. And we have to decarbonize, we have to change the way we live, we have to get rid of that plastic packaging, and we have to get out of our gas guzzling cars, and we have to live our lives very differently. The federal government has already, over the last 5 years, invested $100 billion over 100 actions, so that we are going to, in order to enable Canada, Canadians, our businesses to meet our Paris Accord targets, okay, which is 40 to 45% reduction below 2005 emissions, and to meet our net zero by 2050 goal. Budget 2022 just adds an additional $13.2 billion over 6 years. It's to help transition to zero emissions vehicles. It'll help to sort of clean our electricity grid. It'll help more dollars for oceans and freshwater conservation and clean technology. And then we have a Canada Growth Fund, which is really about, we need private sector investment to help support us in terms of creating the investments and the innovation that's going to help us get to net zero. So basically, the Canada Growth Fund is federal dollars that's going to support private dollars, and it's going to help us get, hopefully, where we want to go. Maybe the other thing I'll just mention here is electric vehicles. I have a car. I really want to transition to an electric vehicle. I haven't yet. It hasn't been a cost-effective thing for me to do. Provinces like BC, all the Atlantic provinces, and Quebec all have great incentives at the provincial level, but Ontario and the Prairie provinces do not. And it's very sad because it still makes it too expensive for electric vehicles for us. And I think it's something that we have to work on our provincial counterparts. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to do other than I want to talk about something that's really important to me and those in my office. We do have about $200 million additional to eliminate plastic waste. In my opinion, it's not enough. And in my opinion, we're not moving fast at the federal level for a plastic recycling standard that allows a Tim Hortons in BC to create the same cup in Ontario and be able to recycle in the same way. So there's different recycling standards right across the country. And so I think we need a national standard, and that does not exist now. And I think that would be a game changer. And I do think that we have to do more to make our those who make packaging responsible for their packaging, because if we don't provide those incentives or make them responsible for it, they are not going to change their behavior. Okay, next, strong public health care. Look, you know, if we ever learned when our public health system was really, or why it was important, we learned it through the pandemic. The federal government invested over $69 billion additional dollars over the last 3 years during the pandemic into the provinces and territories to just, beef up their healthcare system to whatever it is that they needed to support Canadians as we were getting sick with COVID. Recently, we did it, and it wasn't the first time we did it, but we recently added another $6 billion to reduce the backlog for surgeries and procedures. So if you've been waiting for eye cataract surgery or hip and knee replacement or any type of surgery, except gallbladder for sure, but any type of surgery, then $6 billion have been given to the provinces and territories, and there should be no reason why they're not going full steam ahead right now. We also increased, so budget 2022 is going to increase the Canada Health transfer to $45.2 billion. So that's basically, it's a massive increase. So it's about, I think we usually increase it by 3% every year. And I think the $45.2 billion is going to increase it by around 4.5%. And so we're giving a lot of extra dollars to the provinces and territories for their ongoing healthcare needs. And we know that the Canadians are getting older, and so they need this additional dollars. In addition, we are introducing a dental care program. It is influenced by the NDP and their priority. So I want to acknowledge that. So if you have a household income of $90,000 and under, and you have kids 12 and under, by the end of this year, you will be able to access a national dental care program. And then we have an additional $391 million for mental health that's been allocated, and that's on top of the already almost $400 million that we gave last year. It's not $397, by the way. It's $397 million from last year. And then I think I spelled opioid crisis wrong, and I apologize for that. And it is $100 million, not $100 for the opioid crisis. So I will tell you that we are putting a significant amount of money into the opioid crisis as well. It is an absolute pandemic as well, and it is breaking our hearts right across the country that this is happening. So next. Okay, investing in Canadian economy and innovation. So I will tell you again, if we are not growing the Canadian economy, all the other things we want to do, it will not happen. We will not have our healthcare system. We won't have our pensions. We won't have all the good things that we really want if we are not able to sustain our economy and actually make sure that it has a strong foundation for the future. So there's 3 or 4 key things I want to point out. Canada's Innovation Investment Agency. It is $1 billion. It's a $1 billion agency. And essentially what it does is it basically will provide it'll be an independent sort of agency outside of government. It's going to provide independent advice to Canadians and Canadian companies to take their ideas and technologies and turn them into products, services, and growing businesses. We're also going to invest in IP and research. And I would say to you, all the money will go to waste, that $1 billion in point one, if we're not actually getting people to patent or trademark their ideas so that we could actually retain that value here in Canada. So we're going to be investing in IP and research, and I hope that's what they mean. We're also going to be investing in our small business growth, including cutting taxes and making sure that we have a better supply chain infrastructure. So Look, the world and all the flows are changing. We need our railways lines to work better. We need our shipping lines to work better. We need more high-speed internet and high-speed rail. And so all of those things are included in bullet 3. Critical mineral strategy. So a key part of that is because the whole world is moving to decarbonize, not just Canada, and because all of us are working towards trying to make it net zero by 2050, we need materials for the electric vehicles and the batteries. And so we have a critical mineral strategy, which means we're going to we're investing to make sure that in an environmentally sustainable way, we can actually extract the minerals that goes into batteries. So right now, China owns 80% of the market for electrical vehicle like battery supply. And so we're trying to sort of build alternative options for the world to only having to go to one market. So it's good to diversify. And then we have quite a bit of support for union training programs and for labor mobility deductions. We have lots of unions in the riding of Davenport. We're very blessed to have them. Very blessed to have so many workers, particularly working in the construction sector or in the trades. Without them, there's no building of Canada. There's no building of Toronto. There's no building of new homes. And so, we're providing some additional supports to make sure they have what they need in order to succeed. Next. Canada has the workforce it needs. This basically, I'll go through it very quickly. We are looking to welcome a lot more Canadians because we have a declining birth rate and we have a accelerating retirement rate. And so we simply just are not replacing ourselves fast enough. So we have to bring in more Canadians. We have to make sure that their credentials are being recognized. And so all of this is basically about how do we actually make sure IRCC Canada has the funds it needs to be able to take care of our new Canadians. And this, by the way, is in addition to the funding that we've already announced around additional supports for temporary relocation of Ukrainians who need a safe place to stay for a short period of time until hopefully Ukraine is able to get its country back. And then two, of course, we have a commitment to bring 40,000 Afghan refugees as well. So that's it for here. Next. Canada's leadership in the world. Look, I think more than ever, with the attack of Russia on the unprovoked attack by Russia on Ukraine, it has really started or ignited a geopolitical crisis. And I think all countries are feeling that our international rules-based order has been threatened. And so all countries right now, particularly the NATO countries, so that includes Canada, there's 30 countries. So it's most European countries, and then Canada and the US are the NATO countries. So we're beefing up all of our defenses personally, and then we're making sure that the NATO defenses are tip-top as well. And it's all about finding a way to get back to peace and stability and security, because you cannot have peace unless you can defend that peace. And so that is what we have to invest in. We have a lot more money that we want to allocate to Ukraine. They're on the forefront of protecting their own democracy. If we do not put up the money now, we will we'll have to pay more later. So I think we want to just sort of do it now. And then the last part is global health. Lots of people around the world still don't have access to basic vaccines. So we want to do our part and continue to give as much as we can to be able to help with that global health. Next. I think I've talked already about our armed forces. This is really about changing the culture, making sure they have the materials and the people that they need. Really dealing with cybersecurity. It's a huge issue right now, and it increases in importance every single year. Modernizing NORAD. We have to sort of like protect the airspace over North America, and that includes the Arctic, which has come under threat because of Russia. And then, we're constantly looking at defense policy reviews in light of the changing global environment. Next. Ukraine, I think I've already gone through the fact that we have to provide more money now or else we'll give it later. So this is about more money for military aid, more for their economy, and more just for international humanitarian assistance for them. Next. And this just delves down a little bit more in terms of, how we are making sure, like we've made a commitment to increase our global health spending. And so we made that commitment several years ago. And so we will have nearly 1.5 billion allocated towards global health in 2023, 2024. We're proud of what we're investing internationally, and we're hoping other nations step up as well. Next. Reconciliation. We cannot forget. We made promises to a new path with Indigenous people in Canada that we promised to form a new nation-to-nation relationship. 10% of our entire federal budget 2022 is allocated to reconciliation. 3 key areas. One is implementation of Jordan's principle, which basically means equal healthcare access for children, as to like equal access. So they get the same amount of an Indigenous child will get the same amount of access to healthcare as any other Canadian. An additional 1.4 billion for healthcare, clean water, and education on reserves. An additional 4 billion for Indigenous housing. It is just awful, the housing conditions in reserves and in the north. And so we are really expediting the amount of dollars that's going to go to building it. Next. Safe and Inclusive Canada. I could go on. There's a lot of smaller funds, but I know that within Davenport, there is, a very active group, LGBTQ2 group. So I want to make sure that they knew there was 100 million that's been allocated to implement the federal LGBTQ2 action plan. We also have an $85 million allocated to tackle systemic racism, discrimination, and hate. We also have 540 million to advance National Action Plan for Gender-Based Violence. And then for artists, I'm particularly sad. I think we have very little in the budget for artists. I think a lot of it has come in more in terms of emergency supports. We had previously committed in the fall economic statement $500 million to reopen Canada's culture, arts, and sports sort of venues. And what we're doing is we're just providing an additional 50 million to compensate artists for revenue losses. There's more elements in the budget, but I wouldn't say they're substantive. And I think that this is an area that we need more to do a lot more work. Next. Tax fairness and effective government. So look, this is part of how we're going to sort of pay for things. I'll start with the last bullet and go up. We're going to do, this is what all good governments should do. You should always be looking at what are old programs that we don't need anymore. So we're going to start that review, and we're looking for $6 billion in savings. We're going to be continuing to give more money to CRA to make sure that they're going after companies and residents that are not paying their fair share of dollars. And then it looks like we are putting in a series of either tax cuts or tax increases to make sure that people are paying their fair share. So with an extra emphasis on banking and life insurance companies who are asking to do one-time 50% tax income, like to pay a 50% tax on income that's above $1 billion. So that's basically it. I think the last one is just a Q&A. And then I'd love to just start taking your Q&A. So if you could put your question in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. All righty. So let me just see. Let me see if there's any messages I need to be aware of. All righty. Let me see. Let's see what the first question is.
So Julie,
Yes.
We have one in the Q&A. We have Zach actually sent in a thank you for all the support, the strong support for Ukraine, but did have a question of the economic plan looks great, but is there anything we can do to meet our NATO targets of 2% of GDP sooner, given the increasingly heated situation between NATO and Russia and other countries?
Thanks so much, Monica. I think, Zach, thank you for your question. That is an excellent one. Look, I think that right now, NATO's very happy. And I just came back from NATO Parliamentary Assembly meetings in Athens. So I came back a day and a half ago. So I know that they're very happy with Canada's contribution. They're very happy. So that additional dollars that you see, and just so you know, and I should probably have mentioned this, but hold on. So 14% of the budget is actually allocated towards defense. So they're happy to see the amount of investment we are doing, not only in Canada, because it's important for them to see NORAD sort of funded well as well, and our Canadian Army funded well. We're very much in Latvia. We have a number of programs there, and a good chunk of the $8.1 billion is to meet our NATO commitments. I'm not sure if we'll get right to 2%, but I think we're going to get very close to it. So thanks for that excellent question. Thanks for caring, and thanks for acknowledging the leadership and our contribution that Canada has made to supporting Ukraine from every perspective: economic, humanitarian, economic sanctions, military aid, and immigration. We have done all things for them. Okay, next.
Okay, so our next question is for Lena. She said it was great to see you, and for the great updates on the budget and for the support of Ukraine. But her focus is children's mental health. And so her question pertains to children's mental health and crime prevention. You indicated that the budget increased for mental health. Was there anything earmarked specifically for children's mental health?
Lena, you know how supportive I am of you and the amazing program that you run. Not only, I keep on saying in Davenport, but it's, you know, right across the city and across this country, and is an international inspiration. So thank you for your leadership. And it's SNAP, just in case people don't know the program that Lena runs. It's a SNAP program. I don't know specifically. I will be very honest. I had the day that the budget was introduced, I flew out to Europe for the NATO Parliamentary Assembly meetings, and I haven't had a chance to deep dive into each of the buckets, but I will assure you, I will look for it. There's a couple of things for you to know. One is that there is funding and additional emphasis on gun violence, and investing in tackling the root causes of violence in our cities. And I think that's one bucket that SNAP could be looking at. And two, we know that mental health support needed to go up. I'm hoping that, I'll be honest, I would have wanted to have seen billions of dollars at the federal level, because I do think that this is such a huge issue that hasn't received the proper funding for too many years. But I will promise you that in the coming days and weeks that I will work with you to sort of like suss out to see if there's a specific fund. Although I will warn you, sometimes the details don't come available for a few weeks before I actually know which fund might actually be something that SNAP can actually apply to. But keep up the work. Please keep in touch. You know, I'll be visiting SNAP in the coming days and weeks as well. So thank you.
Okay, so the next up we have Mark Nguyen. He said in the slide on ensure Canada has the workforce it needs, you mentioned Canada is expecting to welcome 451,000 new Canadians by 2024 to support the processing settlements of new permanent residents. To Canada, the government has committed $2.1 billion over 5 years. This is exciting news. As the Vietnamese Association Toronto head office is located in Davenport, I would like to ask if you expect to see any of the increase in the budget allocated to immigrant settlement services in the Davenport area.
Well, first, Mark, thank you so much for your the services that you provide on Dundas Street. For those that don't know, we've had a vibrant Vietnamese community in our riding for a while. I think many of them have moved out. But your association has continued to remain in our community, and we are so grateful for your outreach, for your work, and for the community building that you do. So I will say to you that we are very aware of the need to increase settlement services as we increase the number of new Canadians coming. So Davenport will get its fair share of settlement service dollars. Please make sure you stay in touch with my weekly updates, and please make sure to be in touch with me, I would say by early summer, when I should know some more of the details of any additional funding that's coming our way. But I do want to point out to people who care about immigration or who deal with settlement services, our IRCC computer system is going through a massive upgrade. What does that mean? That means a lot of things that might have needed some additional support, not so much from settlement services, but a lot of difficulty people might have had with their application process or needing to get some sort of like advice or feedback or things like that, or just moving things, is going to be addressed in a sort of top of the line, up-to-date immigration system. So more details coming in the days and months ahead. Thanks, Monica. What's the next one?
So the next one we have from Vera Frankel. She says, it's good to see all the commitment to artists and all the media to make up for losses. How do our artists apply for this support?
Vera, you're so great. For those that don't know, Vera is like one of, I think, Canada's finest and most wonderful artists. And through an old dear friend that I was first introduced to Vera. And so I'm just so grateful that you took part today. And I'm so grateful that you're part of our community and all of your contributions, not only to our community, to our country, Vera. So thanks for being here today. Look, I know you get my weekly update, and I know you know that we have a funding section, and I am so on top of it. Anytime I see any additional funding for artists, for any type of program that might be open to anyone interested in our writing, that I'm the first to actually make sure that you guys know about it. And if it's not just, I don't just put it in the weekly update, I often try to make phone calls as well to make sure that you guys are aware of it. So stay tuned. I do think it'll take a few months. So just so you know, typically for people that don't know, the budget's been introduced in the House of Commons. It's not expected to pass third reading and Senate approval and the Governor General sort of stamp until towards the end of June. It's only then when the programs actually start being thought of and actually being created. So I might get some preliminary information this summer. Some of the programs that are urgent might be ready in the summer because they're already worked on right now or started to work on now. But just, stay tuned, keep in touch, and thanks for your question. Vera, stop blushing. I just see your note. Okay, keep on going. Monica, what's the next one?
So the next one we have, and I'm very, very sorry if I don't say this right, but it's for Musa Shahai. And he asks, or they ask, is there a specific program in the newcomers immigration program for Eritrean refugees who are caught in the civil war of Ethiopia? Thank you.
Thank you for that excellent and important question, Musa. To my knowledge, there's not a specific program. It is heartbreaking what's happening in Ethiopia and the Eritrean refugees that are caught up there. It's heartbreaking. I know you've been a champion for the community, and very grateful for your for educating me, to be honest, on what's happening. I will tell you, I have brought to the minister and his team the plight of the Eritreans, because in our particular community, we do have a number of Eritreans, and the message is the same from all of them. They say, we know Afghanistan's important, we know that Ukraine's important, but please do not forget us. And so I have passed that message along. And so I want you to know that you're not forgotten. We do have a very generous immigration sort of system. And the increase that we have in terms of the number of Canadians coming to Canada also includes an increase in refugees. So I would continue to encourage those that those Eritreans that are in Ethiopia in refugee camps to continue to apply, and in particular try to, and we can work on this offline, but I find that those who are able to register with UNCHR also, I think, is an effective way to try to expedite things as well. And I apologize in advance, you guys. I should have let you know that, I'm a little under weather these days, but I wanted to make sure I didn't miss this. All righty. Monica, what's the next question? I know that there's still 2 or 3 left.
Well, I think we actually got to everyone, but if anyone has any new ones, please feel free to put it in the chat. We'll get to you absolutely. But since we do have a little bit of a pause, we're going to go to some that just came in and that we hear from Davenport. So we're hearing, will there be funding to protect renters? And I do think that, we were supposed to revisit those notes.
Well, let me spend a minute on that, Monica. So first, we do have a lot of renters. I just want to remind everyone in Davenport that The Landlord Tenant Act is actually provincially regulated. And so our constitution very clearly delineates the responsibilities at the federal level versus the provincial level. So while the federal government can give quite a bit of financial support to things at the provincial level, it really is like in terms of the laws, it really is dependent on the province to ensure that they are keeping their rent controls, going after those rent evictors, and we really do need the province to continue to step up. But I will tell you that I will send a clear message to Minister Hussen, our Minister of Housing, to let him know that I do think that we can take on a leadership position and advocate for that on behalf of not only Davenport residents, but on behalf of all Canadians.
Okay.
Next question, Monica.
Okay, so then we have another one that comes from Davenport. What is the federal government doing to work with the province and municipalities to speed up the creating of new housing supply?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
What is the federal government doing to work with province and municipalities to speed up creating new housing supplies?
Yeah, no, excellent question. And I covered so much information. It's like so hard to remember all of it. So we put together a $4 billion housing accelerator fund. So that is to work with the provinces and municipalities. Remember I said in the preamble, there's no way we're going to deal with the housing problem unless federal, provincial, and municipal governments get together, because we all hold different pieces of the solution. And unless we all come together, we're not going to be able to sort of actually create the housing supply, and both on a housing affordability perspective and the affordable housing perspective that's needed in Canada. So the Housing Accelerator Fund is what has been allocated $4 billion. That's for us to give more money to the provinces, give more money to the municipalities, incentivize them. We want to say, okay, we're going to give you this money, but you have to accelerate how fast you're able to, process some of the paperwork that sometimes take 3-4 years, and maybe you could try to accelerate the process to 1 to 2 years. So still do a responsible job, but not sort of take so long to do it. Or perhaps we could provide incentive for, so I talked about rapid housing. Well, rapid housing is excellent for those of our most vulnerable, but often they need support programs. So maybe we can incentivize our province to say, we'll provide more rapid housing, but we need you to step up with more of the supportive aspects of the housing for us to actually create even more rapid housing in our cities and towns. Thanks so much, Monica. Next question.
Okay, and so next we'll switch gears a bit and ask, why are we going ahead with the carbon tax with inflation and gas being so high? That is another question that gets asked quite a bit to our office. So we might want to just provide some clarity there.
Yes, no, look, that is an excellent question. So why is it that we are continuing to increase the price on pollution, also known as the carbon tax, while we see that gas prices are going up? Well, here's the reality. The reality is that climate change is happening. We have to decarbonize, and we cannot slow down. We cannot slow down. The federal government is doing a lot of things to help Canadians reduce their costs. So what are some of those things? National childcare. Hello, yay! We have a national childcare program. Now, in Ontario, we're the last province that signed on, and I can't believe I didn't mention it during this presentation, but parents, as of April 1st of this year, saves 25% on their childcare costs. Now, they don't get the money on April 1st because it's already passed, and we signed the deal like a week before that date, but you will get it retroactive, and you should be receiving it this summer. But by this December, you'll be saving 50% of your childcare costs. And then within 5 years, it'll be an average of $10 a day, which is amazing. So that's a huge savings. On average in Toronto, it's around $1,200 a month. So can you imagine eliminating most of that cost? That's a huge savings. So there's a number of other things we've done, like, we're increasing, I can't believe I didn't mention this in the presentation. I must have deleted the slide by mistake. One of the things we've also done is we are increasing the OAS, the old age security, by 10% for those, I think, 75 and older. I want to say it's 75 and older. I'll get one of my staff to tell me if it's 65 and older, but I think it's 75 and older. That's a huge cost to our government, but we want to make sure that seniors, they have more costs as they get older. We want to make sure that they have money. We know it's expensive. And the good news, things like childcare, things like Canada Child Benefit, GIS, old age security are all indexed to inflation. So even as costs go up, the funding that you get from the government also goes up based on inflation. So we cannot in any way slow down on reducing our emissions, on moving to net zero, on decarbonizing. The other thing I'd say is that the climate change incentive also increases. So while the price on pollution or carbon tax does go up, your climate change incentive also goes up. And so that will help you to cover your additional costs. And we hope that you also use it to put better insulation in your house, to do some of the other changes like heat pumps in your house that might actually help to reduce your emissions, your own personal and your family's personal emissions as well. Monica, is there?
No more questions. A very kind note from Isabel Enclan, from her Hispanic leader, with a thank you and a congrats. So I think I'm going to pull one more from the community that comes in quite often, which is what funding is being allocated to help those arriving in Canada and fleeing Ukraine.
Oh my goodness, where do I even start, Monica? You know what? Here's what I'll say to you. So for those that don't know, over 4 million Ukrainians, have left or fled Ukraine to surrounding countries. So Poland, Moldavia, Romania, Bulgaria, you name it, they fled. Germany, they fled. So what President Zelensky has asked us as Canada, is thank you for being generous and offering to help alleviate some of the refugee stress that Europe is facing, but please don't take our future workers, says President Zelensky. So Canada has offered a unlimited temporary extension of the temporary visitor visa for up to 3 years. And it's to allow Ukrainians to come to Canada, seek safety for a short period of time, and while they're here, they can go to school or they can work. And so we're going to give them easy access to attend any of our schools attend any of our schools or work. And on top of that, what we did is as soon as they apply and they get accepted, they actually have access to a job bank, which is awesome because Canadians have been filling this job bank with all the jobs that are available. And as I told you earlier, 1 million jobs are unfilled in Canada. We have so many jobs that's unfilled. And so there's so many opportunities that we desperately need, whether people are here for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, we need them to fill jobs. And so we make it really easy for them. So we do provide additional dollars for settlement services because, settlement services are helping people find a place to live. It's helping them to find local healthcare. It's helping them get into schools, find a job, and learn English. Very, very important. And learn English. So we have all of that, but I will tell you, it's meant as a temporary measure. It's meant as a friendly measure. It's meant as a way to help alleviate the stress of the European countries that have taken in over 4 million Ukrainians in what 36, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, which is incredible. Like it's just, or 6 weeks. It's been an incredible short amount of time for the surrounding countries to actually absorb all of the additional refugees. Monica, thank you for that excellent question. And I do know that a lot of people have asked that. Any other final questions before I say a final?
We
think
have one last question, although I do want to just clarify that we did confirm the OAS increase, 10% OAS is for 75 and over. And we have a question from John Hudecki, is there anything in this budget that can improve the long-term care situation, knowing it's a provincial jurisdiction? Any thoughts? And it probably is our last question for the night, but.
Well, I want to thank John Hudecki for that excellent question. He is an outstanding leader in our community, and I always welcome his very thoughtful questions and his great contribution to community building. Look, I still think that one of the low points of all of COVID, and there was a lot of low points, but I would say this is about the lowest of the low, is what happened to our seniors in long-term care facilities and how we have allowed them to not have a standard of care that was needed. Look, I'm going to be very honest. The provincial government regulates long-term care homes. What we have done at the federal level is we have committed $4 billion to create national long-term care standards and to enforce them across the country. So that is what we have committed. I will tell you quite honestly, John, I'm not sure whether there's additional wording or additional details in this budget. I will endeavor to look for them and to make sure that I get that information to you. I will tell you, though, it is such an important question. It is such an important thing for us to do. I'll also say to you, though, that multi-generational tax credit of $7,500, I think was also a wonderful contribution to the budget, because I think that many people would like to have their elders live with them, but they need some additional support in order to actually sort of readjust their homes so that it's safe places for their elders or those that might need some additional support to live. So I think that's all I have for now. Monica, I think that we will wrap this up. You know, these hours always go by in the blink of an eye, is what I say. So I just want to say a huge thanks to everyone who participated. Thanks for joining. I really miss seeing all of you guys in person. You know, if you think of a question and then you're like, oh, I wish I asked Julie, please make sure to write me at my MP account, the julie.zerowitz@parle.gc.ca. You find it on my website. Always love responding to questions. Although I will tell you lately, I really just love talking to people. So I'm trying to get as many people as possible on my call list. And if you do not get my weekly updates, please, please, please make sure that you are either emailing us and say, please sign me up for your weekly email updates, or follow us on social media, because we post them on social media every week as well. So I want to, of course, one last thanks. I want to thank my amazing team for putting this together. There's no way they're behind. Every MP is an unbelievable team. And, you know, my team is unbelievable. So a huge thanks to Oriana, to Jesse, to Monica, to Eva, and to Paul for doing such a great job today, and for putting this together. I think it was important for us to do. And I really am grateful for the community for joining us today. Anyways, thanks so much. You guys have a great Easter. Please keep safe. And I look forward to seeing you in the coming days and weeks. Bye.